Hello, and welcome back to another exciting edition of the Cardinal Couple Radio Hour, coming to you live from the Northeast Louisville Public Library. Obviously, Paulie not in studio with us today. It is his birthday, which I just found out. Didn't have an article this morning, but happy birthday to Paul on this February 22nd. He is out traveling. Jared is away from us, banking and then traveling as well himself. So it's Jeff and I bringing you the Cardinal Couple Radio Hour this week. Our first time doing just the podcast version alone. Yeah. Did a few shows back in the radio days together.
Yeah. First time doing it without music.
Yeah, it's a much more interesting setup, I think. Yeah. Now that we don't have all the sound effects, it's just sit in the booth and chat it out. Which
Which is
I don't
cool,
know,
but
I don't have a problem with it. It's just the format goes by the wayside a little bit in the way that now we're without Fearless Leader, who drives the way. We've both been busy this week doing our own things, and we're going to find our way through this week in Louisville women's athletics. It was a busy week, to say the least. A few basketball games, a number of softball games, lacrosse games, all kinds of the things that happen once you get into the full swing of spring sports and the ending of, hopefully not ending anytime soon, but the wrap-up of winter sports like basketball and swimming. But
reaching near the end of the season swimming is the end of the season.
Yeah, swimming in ACC championships right now.
Air quotes, post-season. I ran into the swimming team at the airport on Monday when I was there. And I commented about it. I said, yeah, so that's where they were going. They were going to Greensboro. And I said, oh, yeah, you all are in your postseason. And I was talking, it was Lainey Vischer that I was talking to, who had never met before. It was great to talk to her. She was very pleasant. And she was like, well, yeah, our season kind of goes year round. Yeah. But I was like, okay, it's the collegiate team competition season wrapped up, and now they're going to the ACC championships, and then they'll do the NCAA championships. And so from that perspective of that season, all the summer stuff is all more individually oriented things. So I was like, yeah, well, from that perspective of a season, I totally get that you all are busy year round. I'm incredibly impressed by it all. So yeah.
I don't know exactly. Do we have, before we really get into the meat and bones of everything, do we have any Louisville Olympians for Tokyo? Do we know?
Elizabeth Balogun on the basketball
team. I meant from the swimming perspective.
I
didn't know if Worrell or Comerford were qualified this year.
I'm gonna guess that probably one or both of them are, but I haven't seen that for sure.
I also don't even know if qualifications have happened, so we are just
who knows on that,
in the midst of everything. But as we typically do, we will get started here with a bit of the scheduling look ahead to the next week. Obviously, today is a busy day for, we already mentioned swimming and diving. Well, just swimming, actually. Finishing up the ACC championships. They're in the third day. They're sitting comfortably in third place. About 100 points ahead of fourth, about 150 points behind second. I
think diving is there also.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Not a lot of movement capability, I don't think, in this day, but plenty of people will be looking to make some qualifying times for the NCAAs, which will obviously come out much later once all the other championships have wrapped up as well. Rowing is getting ready to get into their season as they're having another scrimmage today down in Orlando, where UCF is hosting some boats. Softball will be the first team sport to get underway here, as they're taking on Wichita State in the Bama Bash in Tuscaloosa. That one's at noon. No video available for that, but their game later this afternoon against Alabama will be on the SEC Network Plus, which is available through the Watch ESPN app. Baseball in their second game against Valpo today at 1 p.m. That one's on the ACC Network Extra. Baseball tried for an immaculate game yesterday. They had 22 out of 27 strikeouts.
Yeah.
So fantastic there.
Men's bas. A record at Patterson?
Yeah, Jim Patterson Stadium record. Yep.
Yeah.
So the way they said that made me think it's not a program record, which is crazy.
Yeah, I know.
But a stadium record for Jim Patterson. Men's basketball hosting the Tar Heels, North Carolina today at 4 on ESPN. Was long slated to be the college game day game of the week. Game day's first appearance in the Center, and then UNC did what UNC did this year. Whatever that was. Hopefully they don't stop doing it against Louisville.
Yeah, they're going to show up and they're going to shoot 75% from three. Like
No,
every other team this season.
They're on like their longest losing streak since Roy Williams got there. I wonder who they'll break that against. Hope not. But that one's at 4. Men's golf taking their way to Puerto Rico in the TPC Collegiate Invitational at Dorado Beach in Puerto Rico. That starts tomorrow. Women's tennis is hosting North Carolina State for their first conference match of the year.
Wow. At
noon. They have lost just one match this season.
Yeah.
They lost to Furman after some injury. Kind of threw things off the rails there in that match, but have won every other one since then, including yesterday. Baseball then wrapping up with the rubber match against, well, hopefully not a rubber match, hopefully a sweep against Valpo tomorrow at 1. Women's basketball heads up to Pittsburgh at 2 p.m. on the ACC Network Extra. And then softball wraps up their weekend in Tuscaloosa with another game against Alabama tomorrow at 2:30 again. Obviously, today's 2:30 game and tomorrow's 2:30 game will be subject to move depending on the games ahead of them.
Yeah.
That one should also be on the the SEC Network Extra. Men's golf at the Dorado Beach Collegiate again on Monday, and then men's basketball with the quick turnaround as they take on the rematch at Florida State at 7 p.m. on ESPN. Golf again, continuing. Get your money's worth out of that trip to Puerto Rico, I suppose, on Tuesday. Baseball hosts their midweek game against Xavier at 3 p.m., and then lacrosse heads down to Nashville for a 4 p.m. game against Vanderbilt. No video listed for that one, so that one will be keep up with it on Twitter, or potentially they just haven't posted whatever it is on the schedule here. Swimming men take their way to the ACC Championships next week, starting on Wednesday, and that'll go through Saturday, just like the women's. Track also heads to the ACC Championships. This one's in South Bend, interestingly. That'll be for the indoor, starting on Thursday and going through Saturday. Then women's basketball takes on Boston College back in the Center at 6 p.m. on Thursday. We'll be on the ACC Network, True Station, not the Extra. Women's tennis hosting Miami on Friday at 1 p.m. in Bass Rud. And then softball is headed to Stillwater, Oklahoma for the OSU Tulsa Invitational, and they'll take on UIC, Illinois Chicago, at 1 p.m. on Friday, and Oklahoma State at 6 p.m. on Friday. Then baseball taking on Western Michigan as they bring them into town for weekend series starting at 3 p.m. on Friday.
So Vanderbilt lacrosse, their schedule has a YouTube link listed for video. So looks like that is available. You have to go to Vanderbilt's women's lacrosse schedule page and find the link on that.
Yeah, so YouTube Live.
Something like that, yeah. Looks like.
That should be a good match. Louisville lacrosse holding their own against ranked teams so far. Have lost both of their ranked matches, but have played them.
Good teams. They're very good teams.
They played them close. They were susceptible to runs against both Michigan and Denver last week. But hopefully against Vanderbilt, who's not ranked, they can pick up their third win of the season.
Yeah.
It's been a tough go for Scott Teeter since he got here, but really seems like he's got his legs under him this year, and I wouldn't be surprised to see a couple upsets.
Yeah. Have you looked at the roster that he's got and just the distribution of classes?
It's pretty young.
There are more freshmen on this team than there are all other three classes combined.
Yeah. So Scott Teeter's getting there, we could say.
He's got a rebuilding job that he's doing. So, it's happening.
And he's getting production from a lot of places.
Yeah.
I noted in today's article, they scored 11 goals yesterday from 6 different players.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty good production, and then a program record in saves to keep that match close. But that gets us through the schedule for the upcoming week. And then next week will actually still be February, as we're in a leap year.
Yeah.
Friends and I were doing some math yesterday because we were frustrated by the amount of time that there is in actual days and years, and we're engineers and we're nerds. And we came up with, and I'm sure we aren't the first to come up with this, but we did all our quick math and determined there should be a super leap year every 168 years, because you still lose time on the leap year, but not nearly as much.
Okay.
It's kind of it's shaky,
Yeah.
but the math checked out.
Yeah.
But we don't do it.
Of course, the leap year rules are weird because it's like every 4 years, except for every 100 years. But then you do it again every 400 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's bizarre. Yeah.
So I guess that's, I don't know. It's very weird. We're like
the
slipping and going forward at the same time.
The far more annoying thing to me as a network engineer, computer network engineer, is leap seconds.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Those are a pain.
We're getting ready for the next Y2K, right? Up in 2036?
2038 will
2038.
be the Unix, Y38.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we overflow from 32-bit or
Yeah.
whatever it is.
Yeah. Which we're closer to that now than we are to Y2K.
Yeah, and we
Yeah.
broke that point sometime last year.
Yeah. Sorry, we're nerding nerding out. Sorry.
There's no Paul or Jared to keep us on track today. So. Speaking of Paul and Jared, we go through the Twitter accounts as always. Real quick, if you check out the Cardinal Couple website, you can get links to all of our Twitters, as well as a widget to keep up with all the UofL Women's Athletics Twitter accounts. So be sure to either follow along the website or go to that widget and follow all of those Twitter accounts themselves. They do a very good job of keeping up to date on play-by-play when games are not available to watch. But Jared tweets us at Mr. Anderson Jared, always bringing good photos of every home event that he's able to photograph. Paulie tweets us at Cardinal Couple. Jeff tweets us at Jeff McAdams and at Card Couple Radio. As he starts to get out some of these home softball games in the next month, you'll see some tweets from there. And I tweet us at Best Case Scenario. So that gets us through the early part of the show here. And we've got, like I mentioned, plenty to talk about. If we look at the last week, Louisville had a home game against Notre Dame in women's basketball. They had a softball game against Michigan and a lacrosse game that they blew out Marquette.
Yeah.
Another home game where this was an away game, women's basketball, where they struggled through some injury to beat Georgia Tech, and then another lacrosse game yesterday and two softball games.
Yeah.
That they finally got back in the win column. So plenty to talk about. We can get started with softball. I think because it was first in the week and the most recent.
Yep. How far back are we going on this?
That was Sunday.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was
it was a loss to Michigan.
Michigan, yeah. And Michigan is top 15 team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were good.
Very good team. What's her name? Coach Hutchins, I think is her name out there. She's a well-renowned coach in the softball field. And that's always has a powerhouse team at Michigan. They're always very good. But yeah, I figured that one was going to be a tall order for us to win that. But it was good to get the win against Wisconsin the day before. But the Michigan was going to be a tough out there.
Yeah, and I think what was the best thing, obviously that Saturday game they beat Wisconsin that day before. And then they scored 3 runs to do so. But it was good to see the offense kind of bounce back in that game against Michigan on Sunday. They hadn't scored more than 4 runs since their second game of the season when they lost to Baylor. So to score 4 runs against a really good Michigan team, even though they did drop that 4-8, it really set up for yesterday's games.
Right.
In which Louisville scored 17 runs over 2 games.
10 innings.
10 innings, 2 games, 2 shutouts, 1 no-hitter.
Yeah.
And 17 runs. Louisville really put the beat down on some not very good Penn State and Wichita State teams.
Yeah.
If you look at just the records going into these games, it may seem like the Cards and Lions and Shockers were all similar teams, but I think that we knew going into this year that this could be a potentially very good year for Louisville, and the 1-7 start was very disappointing.
It was, and a little unsettling because like you said, we've come into this thinking this potentially could be a very good team, and then all of a sudden you do this 1-7, you're like, wait a minute, have we misjudged this? So to see them play so well yesterday restores a little bit of that faith. Obviously, they got a long way to go. It's it's still under a fairly new system under Holly April. It's only her second season with us, so some work to do. But I think there's potential there. There really is. There's a lot of talent on this team, a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of really great people, energy and energizing to get out there and play. I mean, you led by Celine Funky. I mean, she's bundle of energy.
Yeah, and Celine has bounced back a bit from that rough start.
Yeah.
A little bit, getting on base a lot more. Fortunately for Louisville in that second game against Wichita State, they ended up having every batter that came to the plate reached base.
Yeah.
One way or the other, either a hit, a walk, or a hit by pitch. Celine Funky has gotten back to... She's still only got a 180 average, but has put her OPS up to 520. Still a long way to go.
Yeah, that's a low average for her, definitely.
But that on base percentage of 240 means that she's getting on base with walks, which is what you always want. One of your fastest players on the team to be able to be on base. And I think that Louisville showed yesterday they had a number of steals in the two games yesterday, and they executed back-to-back double steals at one point.
Including one of them that was stealing home.
One to score a run.
Yeah.
It was a very weird... That's always an interesting double steal situation to me as a runner on first and third, because it's really only a single steal. And then if you take advantage if the other team's not paying attention, if they don't think. Because if you've got a runner on first and third and the person tries to steal second, you should probably just let him have it.
Yeah.
Because if you try to throw him out, you're in big trouble for the runner on third, which is what Louisville took advantage of yesterday. I think looking at this team and looking at the success they've had in the last, 4 games, winning 3 out of those 4 with just the loss to Michigan, if they could beat Wichita State pretty handily this morning, I say this morning just because it's right at noon, if they can handle Wichita State fairly easily again and carry some confidence, some offensive and defensive confidence into those games against Alabama, if you've won 4 out of your last 5, if you can just play a very good Alabama team, close,
extremely good.
Very, very good perennial national championship contender. You're playing in Tuscaloosa.
Basically, you're playing against an SEC team. They're probably pretty good.
Yeah.
And Alabama being one of the better among those. So.
Yeah, and what I'm getting at is I think the key is to not lose faith.
Yeah.
It's going to be tough. They're, as a bit of a pessimist myself, but realist, I think in this situation, you probably lose both of these games. But if you can get out of the Bama Bash winning the other 3, winning the 3 games you should win and playing close
competitively,
in those games against Alabama, it'll mean a lot in the way that the previous 2 weekends did not go the way that they wanted at all. So if you can get out of this with some confidence moving forward, obviously next weekend is going to be very tough as well, taking on Oklahoma State and Oregon. Pretty much every conference except the ACC, if it's a Power 5 conference, it's got some pretty good teams.
Yeah.
The ACC is okay. It's certainly not. It's
certainly
not the Big 12. It's certainly not the AC or the SEC.
Yeah, the Big 10 is okay. Big 12 is very good. SEC is very good. And just
Pac-12 is a thing that.
Yeah, they're hit and miss.
Yeah. Washington and UCLA, good. Everyone else, okay.
Meh. Yeah.
okay. You play those teams.
Yeah,
but they do have to take on Oklahoma State, Oregon, and Oklahoma State again next weekend, Oklahoma. So you got to get through, and we talked about this before the season even started, you got to get through these tough games and these tough weekends and these invitational tournaments before they get to come home in that first weekend in March.
Right.
So we'll see. We can look quickly at those games from yesterday. The game against Penn State, Louisville exploded in the 4th and 5th innings. They scored all 9 of their runs in those innings. They batted around in the 5th inning. And Chardonnay Harris gave up just a walk in the 1st inning for her to get her no-hitter. I don't know if it counts in the record books. I assume it does. Yeah. It's still a no-hitter, even though it's only 5 innings. Louisville's first since Marissa Becker in 2014.
2014, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So a really good game for her.
Yeah.
It's good to see Louisville win a game with pitching.
Yeah.
It's not been
our norm for the past couple of years.
Yeah. And the final score doesn't really give the entire story with this. You can say, Chardonnay Harris throws a no-hitter. The team wins 9-0. Did pitching really matter that much? But it did, because the first 4 innings, or the first 3 innings of this game, neither team could score. Louisville got 2 runners on base in the first. Chardonnay Harris allowed the walk and then the steal in the second inning there, or in the bottom of the first inning. And then they went 12 up, 12 down over the next 2 innings. So the pitching mattered.
And it's, some of that you have to credit to the rest of the defense as well, right? Our backstopping her. But, you start with good pitching. And the idea there is, you get aggressive pitching, good aggressive pitching that's catching corners. So if they are getting bat on ball, it's not a clean hit. It's not a strong hit. They're hitting, dinks and fly ups and stuff like that the defense can then be able to respond to better. So even if they're still getting bat on ball, it's still a pitching issue. The pitching is still contributing to that. So you get a no hitter, you've got to show the love for the pitcher. I mean, because they're obviously a major part of that.
Yeah, she got 4 strikeouts, 6 ground outs, and 6 fly outs. I'm trying to do the math. Something's wrong in there. Because there's 5 innings. So there's only 15 outs. She couldn't have gotten 16 outs. So one of those, I believe, is an error. But the ground outs are important. Louisville's defense did back her up. Right. She did have the 2 ground outs in that final inning that led to her no-hitter, 1 to third base. And in softball, with the shorter base paths, those grounders to third are often
tricky.
Hits.
Yeah, that's tricky. You can beat that out without too much trouble.
Right.
Yeah. Particularly if you're a quick runner. If you're a slower runner, but yeah.
Yeah, or if you're a left-hand batter, it's a little bit tougher.
Right.
Right-handed batter going from hitting towards third, that's always a tough out. But Louisville's defense did show up. They were crisp. They had no errors, which is also a very good thing that we struggled with defensively in recent seasons. So Chardonnay Harris gets her first win. It is a shutout. It is a no-hitter, and it's 1 walk, 4 balls away from a perfect game over 5 innings. So a good job for her there.
Unfortunately, that walk was a 4-pitch at bat.
Yeah, it was quick.
Grimace a little bit on that, but it was, that was the only one. So, all right.
Yeah, Taylor Roby, obviously, very good offensively. She scored how many runs? She scored 2 runs. She had a hit, 2 RBIs, a home run. She walked. Taylor Roby, I think, is one of the best players on this team. She's playing both ways. She got the win as a pitcher the next game.
It's that weird thing in softball where you have a really pretty good pitcher that also is a offensive powerhouse. And Louisville's had a parade of those. Marissa Becker that you mentioned earlier, last one to get a no-hitter. Megan Hensley in the past couple of years. We've had a history of good pitchers that also then get up to the plate and can really crank it. So it's just fun to watch.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I'm just double-checking this right now. She did get out once. So Taylor Roby got out 1 time yesterday. She was only put out once. She had 6 at-bats. I'll say at-bats, even though statistically they're not at-bats. She had 6 at-bats. She had 5 hits. Yeah. Or 4 hits and 1 walk.
So I don't know how that statistically works, because I think on
walks are not considered at-bats.
Well, no, and that's not what I was going to. But for one of those, how they count it statistically, for one of those at least, she had a pinch runner come in for her.
Yes.
So she would not have been, if that runner got out, she would not have been.
Oh, I just mean she didn't get put out as a batter.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if.
Yeah.
I think she scored.
Yeah.
No, she didn't score on either of her either of her hits in the second game, but she did not get put out at the plate other than 1 time. So a very good offensive day. That's really all you can ask for is you go up to the plate, you get on base.
Right.
And then you go into the circle and you don't allow the other team to get on base.
It's a pretty good day for a pitcher.
The defense was very important in Roby's outing. She had no strikeouts. So 2 hits, 1 walk, and all 15 of her outs were taken by the defense. So again, in that game I mentioned, Louisville had every player that stepped to the plate got on base in one way or the other. So a fantastic offensive game for them. They kept it rolling right after the strong last inning. of the Penn State game, but it was good to see in the fourth inning of this game against Wichita State that they scored again.
Yeah.
It's a little bit concerning that potentially, they score in the fourth and fifth innings of the Penn State game. They score in the first and second innings of the Wichita State game, and you're worried that could be a big stretch where they were just feeling themselves for those few innings, and then it falls off. But they did pick up some more runs in the fourth, and like we said, we'll see just at the end of the show today whether the softball team will continue their offensive power. And I assume we'll see Chardonnay Harris in the circle for this one.
Yeah. Unless
they want to hold her for Alabama.
For the Alabama and have Roby do this one. I don't know. There are other pitchers there too. So, but
there are. We'll see. And Jeff will have all of that, all the happenings from today's softball games and tomorrow's write-up.
Yeah. One of the many things I'll be writing about tomorrow, I guess.
Yeah.
A lot going on.
So if we move on to women's basketball, that one also happened on Sunday. And then Thursday night as well. Louisville welcomed Notre Dame into the Center. And Muffet McGraw probably would have liked to have left the Center.
Yeah, unfortunately I had to leave that one a little early, but I did see about 3 quarters. And it was... at some point I was like, okay, we've got this game pretty well in hand. I had another thing that I needed to go to, but it was, Notre Dame's having a rough year. We'll put it that way, put it nicely. And, Louisville took advantage of it.
It was funny. I saw later in the week a picture that had been posted from Muffet McGraw's Twitter account, and it said, starting a club for coaches who are perennial championship coaches having a down year. We'll save a spot for you, Steve Kerr. And it was a picture of her and Roy Williams of North Carolina. They're definitely having some issues. The loss moved them to 10-16, 5-9 in the ACC. As a team who has been at least a champion or co-champion in every year since they joined the ACC in 2014, it's
And they're looking at not even making the NCAA tournament this year.
I'd say there's no way. Yeah, at 10-16, there's no way. They're not making the NCAA tournament. They will probably play on the first day of the ACC tournament, if not the second day, which will be completely new to them. Yeah. And with the 33-point win, Louisville handed Muffet McGraw 3 of her worst 7 losses in her 30-some years at North Carolina, at Notre Dame.
33, and 34 points, something like that,
And 2 of them this year.
Yeah.
It's tough. You want to say you feel bad for them, but you don't, really. I feel bad for the players. They came in, especially some of the older players who were excited to step up and take on additional roles after much of the starting 5 graduated or went to the WNBA.
The whole starting 5 graduated, plus 6.
Yeah, the top 6 on that team all left. So there was plenty of room for players to step up, and they were probably expecting to be a lot better than they are. They did hold it close against Louisville in the first quarter of this one. It was 18-16 after 1, but Louisville won the second quarter by 12 points. They came out of halftime and won the third quarter by 13 points, and at that point it was over. They then held Notre Dame to fewer than 10 points in the fourth quarter, which is, if I had to guess, probably not the first quarter this season that they've been held under 10. It's just tough, like we mentioned. I think the ACC is better when there are multiple good teams. Obviously, every league in basketball is better when you can point at a lot of good teams.
Yeah.
The ACC and the men's side is also struggling with that this year, but
it's a little bit not quite what the ACC usually is in women's basketball this year. I mean, you got NC State is doing pretty well.
They've dropped 2 straight.
Yeah, but still, in the overall, they're doing fairly well. They're on we dropped 2 straight too.
Yeah,
I mean,
we didn't lose to Georgia Tech at home, but
and Florida State is still a pretty good team. But it's not the normal ACC women's basketball power that we're used to seeing, but we are seeing it's like everybody's moving to the middle in the conference, because you've got, all of a sudden Boston College is like decent, not great, but they're decent, which is like really Boston College. Notre Dame's down, so they're down mid pack and lower. Syracuse is kind of sitting in the middle of the pack, sort of thing going on. It's kind of a weird dynamic going on that. Some of the teams that you think of as not very good in the ACC are having decent years, and then some of the teams that are really great in the ACC traditionally are really off. So it's bizarre. It's a bizarre year.
Yeah, it's definitely one of a lot of parity. Half the team is above half of the league is above 500.
Yeah.
So
nice even spread, nice
yeah.
normal distribution there.
Everyone's pretty good. Louisville 13-2, NC State, like you mentioned, 12-3, just one game back, and then a bunch of teams 10-5, and then it just kind of falls off. It is weird, like you mentioned. North Carolina just a half game below 500. So
yeah, North Carolina being that low is odd. Yeah, Boston College being above the halfway point is odd. It's just, but more power to them. And nothing but love for them. But it's just a weird conference this year. Notre Dame's way down at the bottom. Miami's usually better than fourth from last. So
yeah, they're another team having a tough time. Ranked 21st in the preseason.
Yeah.
And they fell out quite rapidly. They're now sitting at just 13 on the season. Montpellier being injured for much of the season has not helped that.
Their case. Yeah. But you're looking at Virginia Tech tied with Florida State, which is like Virginia Tech, really.
Yeah.
I mean, they're never a bad team, but it's like, wow, that's a pretty good showing for them. So.
Yeah, and the way that it sits with NC State dropping a couple of games, Louisville now on top of the ACC in both men's and women's. Going for a double sweep, which hasn't happened since Big East. Maybe not even the Big East days, because we always had to play UConn on the women's side.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
God, that would go way back if we've ever
if it's ever happened.
Yeah.
So that would be interesting.
Paging Kelly Dickey.
Paging Kelly Dickey. Speaking of Georgia Tech, they were above 500 until they had to play Louisville on Thursday night. They hosted the Cards and hosted Liz and E for the first time since they transferred out.
There had to be a little bit of an interesting dynamic there.
Yeah, and I think you can't fault. Obviously, you can't fault either one for leaving.
Right.
But the situation has changed there. They had a coaching change.
Right.
So you're playing against the team that you selected to begin with, but not the coaching staff. So there's probably not too much bad blood. It's probably mostly a weird feeling to have to play against your old teammates.
Right. Yeah.
I always find that interesting whenever players transfer in conference,
right.
And particularly when they are granted waivers and play immediately the next year.
Yeah.
There are a lot of the players on that same team that they played before.
Right.
We mentioned they suffered through some injuries. Dana Evans was limited in the fourth quarter. She did finish with 35 minutes, came out after rolling her ankle. And Louisville did most of their damage in the first half in this one. Took a 5-point lead at the end of the first quarter. Added another 5 points in the second to take a 10-point lead to halftime, and then just won the second half by 1 point. So this was an interesting one. It was on the road, like we mentioned. Georgia Tech was very excited to bring Louisville in. When you're in the top 10, you get every team's best shot.
Right.
Every game.
Got a target on your back.
Louisville has known that for a long time, and they took the brunt of it on last week against Syracuse. Last Sunday, I believe it was. They learned that lesson, and it seems like they took it to heart. They weren't playing their best. Shot just below or just above 45%, so they did okay, but just couldn't really get anything going offensively. Yeah. It's interesting to shoot 47% and only score 58 points.
Yeah, which gives a testament, I guess, to probably. I did not get a chance to watch this one, so I was at a professional event Thursday night. But testament to the defense to shut down even chances at shots versus just altering shots and making shots miss. And that suggests that it was just you couldn't even find open looks to try even take. So I don't know what do turnover stats look like. Is that
14 turnovers? So about middling.
Yeah,
it's not good.
Yeah,
but it's a negative ATO. But They didn't get to the free throw line. They didn't take a lot of threes. Louisville only took 12 3-pointers in this one, which is a very low number for them. But if you're getting into the lane and you're scoring, what would that quick math be? 17 out of 37. So about the same amount from 2 that they scored as they did overall, because they shot 50% from 3. If it's working inside, I guess that's just what you go with. It is very interesting that Louisville took 7 free throws, and all 7 were taken by Jazz Jones and Dana Evans.
Huh. Interesting. Of course, those are the 2 people that are, what's the phrasing I'm looking for? They're creating. Yeah. They are moving and driving and driving and dishing and stuff like that a lot. So they're going to tend to get more. But yeah, that's an interesting. Yeah.
You'd like to see your bigs get fouled. To put it bluntly,
particularly Kylie, yeah.
I mean, Kylie shot 6 of 11 from the floor. She shot 5 of 9 from 2-point range. She picked up 13 rebounds. She had a double-double at 13 and 13. You can't be mad at it. Yeah. It's a very weird situation where it doesn't really seem like the inside's involved all that much.
Yeah. She's got 4 blocks. You gotta love that.
That's true. Yeah. Louisville played short.
You got 3. Wow. Go eat.
Jeff's catching up on the stat sheet.
Yeah, no, I didn't get a chance to watch it. So,
Mikasa got 1 too, if you want to give her a shout.
Yeah. I'll always give Casa a shout out.
Louisville played a really short bench. Only 3 subs in this one. Casa, like we mentioned, Yassine Diop played 17 minutes, unsurprising as the 6th player off the bench here. And then E. Dixon did not get a lot of Liz Dixon, E. Balogun. Liz Dixon did not get a lot of minutes in this follow-up. 1 foul, 1 turnover, so she filled the stat sheet in the wrong way. Yeah. But it happens. Louisville rode what they had. 4 out of 5 starters got more than 32 minutes. And then Bianca obviously being subbed out for Yassine Diop when they played a smaller lineup there.
Right.
So, like we said, not great on the turnover stat. Assists, 10 out of 23. Also not the best, but you come away with a win and you move on. And you take what you get in that one. So Louisville's going to head up the road. They're going to take on Pittsburgh in their next game here. Pittsburgh is sitting at, if I can get through here,
pretty low.
Yeah, they're not great. Last in the conference, I believe.
Yeah, I think.
If I just had that pulled up. Yeah, Pittsburgh last in the conference at 1-14, 4-22 overall.
Oof, that hurts.
Yeah, if you lose this one, it's bad.
Yeah,
you lost to Syracuse last week. Syracuse is above 500 in conference.
Syracuse is a decent team.
Yeah. If you lose,
women,
you lose to Pittsburgh, you're having a bad time.
Yeah,
you could say. Of their 4 wins, if I even really want to pull this up, sadly,
I beat Central Connecticut State.
Okay. Central Connecticut State.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound like a real D1 team.
No, it doesn't. Fairleigh Dickinson.
Okay.
Ole Miss.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
All right.
Which that one's kind of like, yeah, okay. And then
their 1 conference game.
Oh, lots of L's. Wake Forest, who's actually not a bad team. So
Wake at 6-10 in conference, 13-14 overall. So
not terrible, but yeah, interesting. The 53-48 on that one. So 5-point win there. Interesting.
Yeah. Louisville beat Pitt by 34 in the first game.
Yeah.
When they played in the Center.
We were talking about Notre Dame having such a down year, and Notre Dame beat them by 22.
Yeah.
So yeah, this was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said,
Boston College beat them by 11.
Yeah. Jeez. 34-point win in the game against Pitt in the Yum Center. That was right before that first game against Notre Dame and just before Louisville's 3-game slide. So now Louisville's coming off of a bit more juice, having won 3 games straight, including that win over number 4 NC State on the road. Louisville has been road warriors a bit recently after that loss to Syracuse. Mm-hmm. And they're going to take the show on the road to Pittsburgh, and I believe they play in the Peterson Event Center, correct?
Yep.
Just like the men?
Yes, I think so. I think that's correct.
So we will see if the Louisville women can continue Louisville's dominance of that building. I see no major setbacks.
No, I don't anticipate.
unless there's not unless there's more than we know to Dana's ankle injury.
Yeah, and I think Pauly reported yesterday that both E and Dana are day to day. So I don't think there's anything like significantly structurally a problem there. Just some soreness and got to get over that. It just takes a few days.
Yeah, and if there's anything you can do, if there's any team you're gonna kind of accept that against, it may be Pitt,
and maybe leave them on the bench and let them get fully healed from that. So because you're probably not going to need them. Without trying to get too overconfident here. Let them heal up. Let them take the time.
Yeah, you have to play 2 top half teams in the conference. Following this Pitt game, you get both of those games at home. You get almost a week off after the Pitt game, 4 whole days. And then you're gonna head into the ACC tournament. The basketball season, women's basketball season, is wrapping up rapidly. So they really need to make sure they've got all guns blazing. Because Louisville was looking for a national championship this season. They've shown that they can hold their own against some of the best teams in the league. They've beaten multiple top 4 teams. UConn is having a down year.
Yep.
Baylor has lost some interesting games. This is a season that sees the most parity.
Don't know what to make of Baylor right now.
The season sees the most parity that women's basketball has seen in a long time.
Yeah, it really has.
And if you're looking for Jeff Walls to potentially bring his first banner to Louisville, this could be the year.
It'd be a good year to do it, yeah.
So, like we said, starts with a game against Pitt. Louisville trying to fight their way back to that top seed line will be tough to do with not a lot of opportunities remaining to get marquee wins. But if they can win out and win the ACC tournament, probably beating Florida State or NC State again on the way to that, then that would be a good way to potentially increase that. The last team that was in action other than swimming and diving, as we mentioned, lacrosse played a couple of games this week. They opened the week on Tuesday when they took on Marquette, and they soundly beat the Golden Eagles.
Yeah. This is weird because I keep thinking of Marquette as having a new team, but they're I guess they've been. This is their 7th season.
I think we play them like every year, right?
So I mean, it's not like they're this like totally brand new team anymore. They're not a traditional powerhouse of been doing it for 75 years or whatever. But they're over their opening here, so I should quit thinking of them that way. But I still kind of always do. So, yeah.
I think what's interesting about Marquette is that based on where they are, and sorry, that game was on Monday, not Tuesday, but based on Marquette's location, you considered that they would be decent at lacrosse. They're in an area, the upper Midwest,
that has some tradition of lacrosse,
right?
And usually I think
Northeast a bit more
Northeast, but the upper Midwest has quite a bit, yeah.
So, like we said, Louisville just absolutely manhandled the Golden Eagles. 9-2 in the first half, 7-4 in the second half. There was a running clock, I believe, midway through that second half.
Yeah.
Just not a lot of struggles for the Cards, to put it lightly. It was a very good bounce back game for them after the disappointing loss against Denver. I say disappointing. Denver was ranked in the top 10.
That's not a bad loss.
It was disappointing because they kept the game very close for a while and then struggled near the end. If I can see who scored. Louisville had goals from Hannah Morris, Caroline Blaylock, Legor Catalano, Alex McNicholas, Ali Hall, Alexis Steffens, Paige Richborg. It's a long list. When you score 16 goals, there's going to be a lot of scores.
Yeah.
But I think what's the most interesting about
some of the usual suspects, but then some new names in there that I don't particularly even recognize.
Right. What's interesting about going down that list, I mentioned earlier that Louisville had 6 scorers on 11 goals in yesterday's game against Michigan, and that list does not overlap all that much.
Yeah.
Hannah Morris, Caroline Blaylock also scored yesterday. There was one more. Where did I miss it? Paige Richborg scored yesterday. But then it was Shayla Scanlon. So I mentioned that you've got a large number of scorers, you've got a lot of diversity in scoring. And if you look at the back-to-back games, you've got even more diversity in that scoring.
Yeah, those together, it's definitely a lot of again, it was just more freshmen on the team than there are the other three classes combined. Like I mentioned earlier, it's a lot of new names, but a lot of people that are stepping up and finding a good role in pretty quickly, which is pretty. I mean, it's a great opportunity for some of these players coming in. Obviously, we heard about Caroline Blaylock a lot last year. She's a very, very good player. She's going to be the backbone of this team this year. So, it's neat to see some of this. Shayla Scanlon was there. Allie Hall scored some last year. So some of these names we've heard last year, but a lot of new ones in there. It's exciting.
Yeah, and Caroline Blaylock, a preseason,
preseason
all-ACC member.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So obviously the stars are shining in the way that you want them to. The players that you want to be leading the team are doing so. That led to Louisville's second game of the week against Michigan. Another top 15 matchup for the Cards. Like we mentioned earlier, lost that one 11-15. A tough game. Louisville allowed a 5 spot to open the game, which Scott Teeter was not pleased about.
Yeah, no, you're never going to be. I thought when I was, again, I don't think there was any video on this one. Didn't get to watch it, but I was thinking it was 6-0, but then I guess I thought I saw that, but I guess not. So we scored.
I think it may have been 6-1. It was 6-1.
Shayla Scanlon came out and put one in there. So okay, but regardless, that's a big start for Michigan. You dig yourself an early hole, and then they had to dig themselves. You made it 7-6 at halfime.
They did.
Michigan lead.
Yeah, with a Scanlon.
Right
hat-trick.
at the end.
She had a hat trick in the first half.
Right at the end of the first half.
Yep.
Came on, tied it a couple of times in the second half. Couldn't go ahead. Michigan scored the last 3 goals. It was a tough game against struggle. Played them really competitively, which was exciting because this is a good team in Michigan. So that's encouraging.
It's tough when you bookend the game with 17 total minutes and a 9-0 score for Michigan in the 17 minutes that bookend the game. It's going to be tough to win that way.
Yeah.
And when you look at that, Louisville really wins this game 11-6.
Yeah, if you just
in the middle in the middle 43 minutes.
Yeah.
Right? But I think we'll see. It was similar in the Denver game last week. Denver opened up an early lead, and then they scored a few at the end to really put it out of reach. But if Louisville can start to open the game against these big teams and close the game well against them, that's obviously going to be a huge boon for a team that has the talent, they have the scoring, they have the defense, and the goalie, which we learned yesterday, obviously with Rachel Florek breaking the program record.
Yeah, that was amazing. And it should
17.
17 was what it was? Okay, and it was in the mid-teens. Program record in saves against, again, in a game we lost.
Right.
And they scored 15, right? Which is, that then makes me look at going, wait, what's going on?
Maybe the defense is
otherwise. But, great for her. It was a great job.
Yeah, I mean, Michigan's ranked 14th for a reason, right?
Right.
They're going to score a lot of goals this year. They already have scored, if I can get to their page with any speed. Michigan is going to score a lot of goals this year. They're ranked that high for a reason. They showed against Louisville that they have the ability to win those games.
And so the crazy thing is that Michigan didn't have that many more shots that they took. It was 37-27, right?
Right.
I mean, they had more, but it wasn't like radically so. So, it's interesting. So, lots of definitely. Rachel had 17 saves. Michigan's goalkeeper, I don't know the name. The name's somewhere on the stat sheet, and I can't find it right now. Had 9. So there were definitely shots being taken both ways. So.
Yeah, Michigan's only played 3 games so far this year. 4 if you count an exhibition that they played against Notre Dame. They beat Notre Dame on the road 9-8. They beat Jacksonville on the road 10-8, and then they lost on the road to USC. So this was their first home game, and they came out and they showed what they have.
Interesting. You definitely don't think of USC as a lacrosse powerhouse.
But 16th in the country.
Yeah.
And they'll host another ranked matchup today or tomorrow. Sorry, when they take on Colorado,
Yeah.
who's 18th. So Michigan then later they're going to play Denver, as anyone who wants to maintain their ranking plays Denver pretty much every year. They're a very good team. But we'll see. Like we said, Louisville is rebuilding.
Yeah.
In lacrosse.
Yeah, it's definitely a whole program rebuild. And it's not just we graduated a bunch of people and we need to rebuild. This is a whole program rebuild.
Yeah.
Almost from the ground up. So you can almost think of this as a second year team, as a second year program in a lot of ways. So and I like where it is. I like where it's going. It's the trajectory is in the correct direction. And in a few years, I think there's potential of having a really great program that's going to be among the top programs in the country. Got a little ways to go, but it's exciting to kind of watch it and hope for it and see where it's going.
Yeah, and Scott Teeter's excited about this team. He's excited about this program. He's definitely a very good hire. The record hasn't shown it yet, but the excitement that he brings, if you listen to his interviews with Paulie, the excitement that he has for this team and that he brings to the program, and he's really trying to build it back up. Louisville was a pretty good lacrosse team under the previous administration, and extenuating circumstances brought them to where they are. But Louisville is looking to get back there. If they can be one of the best teams in the ACC, they will be one of the best teams in the country if they can push in that direction, similar to field hockey.
And he's just a really nice guy.
Well, it's hard to beat Louisville's band of coaches. Louisville has a lot of great coaches. They're good people. It seems that we're finally in a stage where we can say that it's hard to say whether anybody on the coaching staff is not just a genuinely good person from the things that we know publicly anyway. And it has been a while, like we said, since we've been able to say that with some interesting coaches.
A few past choices turned out to be maybe a little iffy, but okay.
But that's where we are. Lacrosse, I didn't mention, they're taking on Vanderbilt in their next game. Vanderbilt, not a team you think of when you think of lacrosse and dominance. Certainly.
No, you don't really think of the SEC in that. In fact, the SEC, I don't.
Did they play it in the SEC?
Lacrosse, so that they may be playing in a different conference there.
They play in the AAC. Vanderbilt does.
Okay, yeah. So I don't think the SEC has lacrosse. I know Kentucky doesn't have a team, for
right.
example. Interesting.
Yeah. So, this game against Vanderbilt's going to be tough. They beat Wagner 14-11. They beat Kennesaw State 21-11. And their one loss on the season so far is against number 5 Boston College, and it was on the road. And they only lost 12-15. Right, so that's a very similar game that Louisville just played against Michigan.
Second game of the season, they're playing in Boston.
Yeah.
That had to be cold.
Probably wasn't great. Vanderbilt's playing today against Lehigh. That's a home game getting ready to start here shortly. And then they'll take on Louisville, and then they'll host Denver as well. Denver really gets around.
Yeah.
as far as playing everyone goes.
It's crazy because it's a school that when you think of sports, you just don't ever think of Denver.
Yeah.
Until you get to lacrosse and like, oh wow, they're really good.
Well, if you like name college sports teams in Colorado, you're gonna say Colorado, and you're gonna say Colorado State, and that's probably it.
Yeah,
those are probably the teams you're gonna mention.
Yeah, that's it.
And then Denver comes along in lacrosse, and they play everybody, and they're good. And they're also Vanderbilt's also gonna play Michigan. This is gonna be. Once you get to tournament time, if Louisville has a good enough record to be on the bubble, I'd say, this is going to be a team that you can look back and you're going to look at a lot of common opponents.
Yeah.
They played Vanderbilt, they're going to play Vanderbilt, who's going to play Michigan and Denver. 2 teams Louisville played. They played Boston College, a team Louisville's going to play.
You're going to have some good comparisons there.
Yeah. They're going to play Virginia Tech, another team, and Cincinnati.
Yeah, and I think you're going to find... I think what they'll find is that, hopefully, anyway, that the losses are losses to good teams, right? I mean, so far that's certainly the case. You
Right.
know, Denver and Michigan are both very good teams. They're both ranked. You know, and that goes a long way to say, you know, okay, you got some good wins in there. The losses you had were not to, you know, little podunk teams. So that goes a long way towards getting postseason hopes and bids. So
Yeah, and we've got a long way to go. Obviously,
Yeah,
it's a very long
certainly.
season.
Yeah.
There are a lot of ACC teams that play lacrosse, and Louisville's
Yeah.
going to take them on. The ACC championship scheduled for the last week in February in Chapel Hill. Or last week in April, sorry.
Okay, I was like,
It is
no way.
it is the last week of February now.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're getting ready to start the ACC championship right now. dude.
Yeah.
No, the last week of April. So a long time to play, like I mentioned, the rest of the season. And we'll see. We'll see what Louisville has. They're going to open their ACC conference schedule next week when they take on Virginia Tech.
It's funny. I like that. You go, God, that seems like such a long way away. And then it gets there, and I'm like, wait, lacrosse is in postseason already?
Yeah.
'Cause it's as softball is like mid-season.
It's much
at
longer.
that point. Yeah.
It's similar to baseball and,
Right.
and anything else,
Yeah.
the way that happens. Just much longer seasons in those diamond sports.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much the week
Yeah.
that we had in women's athletics. A pretty good week
Yeah.
for the Cards.
Can't complain too much. I
Every
mean,
team got a win.
Yeah. And the losses weren't bad losses.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, and none of them were across any sport. So, you know, swimming and diving's doing well. I think they're still sitting in third, right?
Yep. Yeah, comfortable third place, like I
yeah,
mentioned,
yeah.
about 100 points ahead of second,
Yeah.
or about 100 points ahead of fourth, and about 150 behind
Yeah.
second.
It's
So
a
not a
move,
lot of
you know.
movement.
Yeah. In doing well, Molly Fierce is doing well in diving there, which is nice to see. Again, she did well last year as well. But to see some success on the diving side of that is neat as well for that program. And obviously our swimming and diving has had great success on the swimming side for a long time. So yeah, it's neat to see that. So yeah.
So you want to give us a final thought, Jeff? Was that it?
Yeah, it kind of was. Yeah, I don't know. Gosh, getting into the heart of some of the spring sports already, diving into them. Still early in the season for the two big ones that we follow. But it was a little shock on Monday when I saw the swimming and dive team at the airport, and I was like, oh yeah, you're all going to postseason. Yeah, you kind of forget that they're kind of a winter sport, really.
Yeah. As far as the collegiate season goes.
Yeah, as far as the collegiate team season. Yeah, so yeah, they'll move the bulkhead down a little bit here in a little bit and start their long course work, which is a little more individually oriented. So yeah, it'd be fun.
Yeah, and I'm looking at this little basketball team. Just 3 more regular season games. So after this game tomorrow against Pitt, they'll have 2 home games, and that'll be it before the ACC championship. So
I've kind of lost track of it in the past couple of years because I haven't had the sheet of season tickets that I'm tearing off.
right.
Because they're not all electronic now. And I was like, oh wait, so it kind of snuck up on me this year. Reaching the end of the season.
And Louisville in a good position to host. I don't think those 2 regular season games are going to be the last 2 games at the Yum Center for this team. So be sure, if you are a season ticket holder, to keep an eye out on your emails for the updates for when those tickets go on
They've
sale.
already been coming out. Yeah, I've already seen some.
Yeah. And then if you are looking for single tickets, once the tournament rolls around, be sure to pay attention to that as well. Louisville looking for a top 4 seed. I don't think they're in any danger of missing out on it unless they drop a couple of more clunkers somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, the discussion is whether they'll get a 1 line.
Right.
And it's close. It's going to be close.
But that's it. That's our week. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.